views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to Public Health America, a 30-minute program on BronxNet where we talk with national experts to promote health and social justice. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We begin by focusing on a current health topic from the COVID pandemic to cardiovascular disease. Our goal is to provide you with not only the best science, but practical tips to live a healthier life. On Public Health America, we also celebrate what studies have long documented, namely the unparalleled value of a college education by setting the stage to pursue a career of your choice, increase lifetime earnings and opportunity, and champion the ability to engage in civil debate. But for many, finding a path to college is neither clear nor certain. What if you're a high school student with supportive parents but feel daunted by the prospect of being the first in your family to attend college? What if you're a single mother or father and want to attend college but have no childcare? On Public Health America, our expert will also talk about decisions they made and support they received that helped them beat the odds. By sharing one or two life lessons, their stories may provide you with the inspiration and method to realize your dreams. This is Public Health America. Welcome to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. It is my pleasure to have with us today Dr. Suzanne del Gizzo, Professor of English at Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Suzanne.
Great, thanks. Nice to be here. Pleasure
to have you here. So I know you've been doing some cutting edge work on program development related to liberal arts education at Chestnut Hill College. And focusing particularly lately on a minor in health humanities. And then also you have been a longtime scholar on Hemingway. Let's kick it off with the programmatic development. Set the table and tell us a little bit about the minor in health humanities.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for that question. We started to move into academic centers a few years ago, around 2018. And part of the charge was to imagine new interdisciplinary programming. So I started to think a little bit about my own personal history with medicine, and I looked around and noticed there were these new programs in health humanities that were focusing on what humanities specifically and the skills that we develop, things like attention to narration, storytelling, careful listening, careful observation, ethical appreciation of ethical complexity, and even things like cross-cultural awareness, how they were very needed skills in medical professions and in service professions. So using a few other schools as a model, I decided to put together a minor for health humanities at Chestnut Hill.
That's a great idea. I will tell you, I have yet to speak with a CEO of a hospital or healthcare organization or middle management that managed the healthcare workforce that didn't say that they didn't need healthcare providers out of higher ed that didn't know how to think conceptually to change with the times. Healthcare is changing so rapidly that the underpinning of analytical thinking, conceptual reasoning that liberal arts education provides is absolutely critical to that training in health professions. Is it fair to say that that's part of the impetus for this kind of program?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the impetus, and then the more specific impetus beyond the liberal arts education piece is specifically those humanities skills. So it's an interdisciplinary minor. It pulls from English, philosophy, religious studies, but also human services and psychology, sociology. And the goal is very specifically around acknowledging and honoring the fact that when you are in these clinical settings, you're dealing with other human beings, and you have to appreciate the wholeness of that interaction, not just think of them as a case or a problem to be diagnosed or an issue to be addressed.
So I know it's a new program, or I believe it's a new program. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that
and forgive me if this is an oversimplification, but it sounds like an incredibly deliberate, supercharged uh, complement to what top-notch programs and health professions ought to be doing. But and I'm quite familiar with the programmatic requirements at the baccalaureate level and the graduate level for a lot of health professions programs, and they're just completely jammed. So it's very difficult to address everything as fully as you'd like. How much is in this minor is integrated with the curriculum on the health profession side? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, sure. So it's 18 credits for the minor, and so along the way, there are probably about at least 3 of the courses out of the 6 are classes that you would likely take as, for example, a biology major or a health sciences major. So the other interesting thing that I'll take this opportunity to point out is that English degrees, and English is a humanity, but English students are the 7th most accepted major after the physical sciences and health sciences into medical school. And in fact, a lot of medical schools report tremendous satisfaction and even look to recruit humanities majors and specifically English majors precisely because they have these other skill sets. I mean, of course, they have to take the science and the math courses they need to qualify for medical professions and for medical school. But an English major is not a totally unsurprising major for a student who's attending medical school.
I really want to underscore that point, which is so important, and I think oftentimes missed in the hectic world we live in today. I was recently speaking with and invited a admissions director of an R1 top 5 medical college in the U.S., and he was addressing the very point you're making. His point was, of the 10,000 applications we get for 400 spots, there is no shortage of people with perfect academic records in STEM. If you want to distinguish yourself, take Spanish, take humanities, take English, and that dovetails with precisely what you're saying. And I'll also I can't help but mention that as an undergraduate, I was an English major, and there's no question that that helped set me up to learn how to write, and that helped me later in terms of the work I did with grants. So let's before we turn to Hemingway, because that's such a wonderful chance to talk about such a great author. But what do you see as next steps with this great minor? When does it get off the ground? Has it already started? What's your sense of next steps?
Well, so like so many things, it was a bit of a casualty of COVID. The minor was proposed in 2019 and approved. We started to bring in some specialists to talk about how to shape the minor and what issues to consider. We had speakers from Columbia School of Narrative Medicine and the CEO from Chestnut Hill Hospital come and talk to us. And then COVID hit. So we continue to develop the program through COVID, but we just started actively recruiting into the minor now. So my goal is to just raise the profile of the minor, let our students know what we believe it can do for them. And I would like to say it's broader than just medical school. It's also for possible and potential nurses. It's for physician's assistants. I even see it as applicable for human services majors who are going to work in social services and maybe even, police officers, because anytime you're dealing with other human beings in an intense and stressful situation where you have to listen carefully and assess things quickly, I think this minor could help students develop those skills. So we're going to do a big push, and we also this year when we got back started with a wellness week, a humanities and wellness week, to start to raise the profile of the way humanities and wellness intersect. And I think the timing post-COVID and even during COVID couldn't be more perfect.
Excellent. So with a little time we have left, obviously this is a pretty broad topic, but tell us a little bit about your work and expertise on Hemingway.
Yeah, so, in a strange way, I feel like Hemingway's, dogging me throughout my entire life. But I first wrote my undergraduate thesis on Hemingway, took a break from him during my master's, and then revisited him for my PhD thesis. But I think and then just became involved with the society, and now eventually serving as editor of the Hemingway Review, which is the Society's scholarly journal. And I've been in that position since 2014. But the really interesting and strange point that I wish to make here is there have been 3 editors of versions of the Hemingway Review, but only 2 editors of the journal since it's become a major peer-reviewed journal, Susan Beagle and me. And both of us come from families where our parents were in the medical professions, and Hemingway's father was a doctor. And so I find all of these strange confluences in my work between Hemingway and my work now in health humanities.
Wonderful. So I will again tip my hand and say, while it is next to impossible to choose, A Farewell to Arms has always been one of my favorites. It's one of the few books I've probably read 3 times. But tell us something interesting about A Farewell to Arms that I don't know, which won't be difficult to do.
Well, I don't know, but at the end, spoiler alert, if you haven't read Farewell to Arms, plug your ears now. But Catherine Barkley, who is the heroine, dies in childbirth during a C-section. And Hemingway wrote that as part of the story right after his second wife, Pauline, had to deliver their first son, Patrick, through a C-section. So I think part of his knowledge and understanding of the risks and dangers of the C-section in 1928, because the book's published in 29, Patrick's born in 28, extends, and also his sort of exercising of his fears of that negative outcome, mother and child dead, is part of the backdrop for that final chapter in A Farewell to Arms.
Well, there you go. I didn't know that, and that is a very, as a father of 3 daughters, having witnessed the birth of 2, I can definitely relate to the anxiety of the process, even if my role in that moment is, let's say, drastically less than my partner's. But yeah, interesting story. I mean, look, let's face it. There's just so much to be learned from reading literature from all cultures. Certainly as an undergraduate, I will say being an English major just immensely enriched my life and set the table for lifelong learning and lifelong thinking. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, Dr. Suzanne del Gizzo is going to tell us a little bit about her life story and her academic journey and how her undergraduate experience helped set the table for the great work that she's doing today. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We'll be right back.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
Welcome back to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. Suzanne, so in this segment, I always begin with the same question. Where were you born? And tell us a little bit about your formative experiences.
Sure. I was born in New Jersey, not too far from Lower Manhattan, in Summit, New Jersey. And my parents and I grew up in Roselle, New Jersey, which is really close to about 30 minutes, 20 minutes outside of Manhattan. My father was a doctor and then a general practitioner, and then eventually became a chief medical officer of a hospital that is now known as Trinitas in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And my mother was for many years an ICU nurse and then later worked in my dad's office. The medical professions were mixed in with my childhood from the very beginning. My earliest memories of my father's is doing rounds, coming home late, talking about the patients that he was seeing in the hospital, and then reading. So right from the very beginning, medicine and a love of books were in my childhood home.
Wonderful background. Did what sort of K through 12, what was your experience? What sort of school or schools did you attend?
Well, it's a little bit ironic given where you and I will soon meet, Chestnut Hill College, because my background was grammar school with the Sisters of St. Joseph at St. Joseph's Grammar School in Roselle, and then Mother Seton Regional High School in Clark, New Jersey. After that, I sort of kept going in my family's traditional vein and attended Holy Cross College for 2 years. But for me, I wanted a different kind of experience. So I finished my education at New York University, where I studied in English and then eventually I double majored in philosophy. So that was a fun moment when I told my my medical profession parents that I would study English and philosophy. We had some interesting conversations about that.
And so that sounds like it set the table very well for transitioning to undergrad. What was that transition like? What sort of decisions did you face and where did you land?
Well, right. So the difficult part about my situation in undergrad, I had a very smooth transition because I loved school. I knew I wanted to go to college. I never thought that I wouldn't go to college. But when I had to tell my parents that I was more interested in studying literature and then philosophy, it was a rough moment in my household because everybody just sort of assumed that I would go into some form of the medical professions. But I really can't handle blood. I don't know how they do it, actually, to tell you the truth. So in the end, I made my case for what I was doing. And my parents eventually understood that I had a lot of opportunities doing both of these majors. They didn't necessarily mean I would go to nursing school or for an MBA right after school or even to medical school. But they understood that I was doing something that I loved And that when you do something you love, not to underestimate the importance of career readiness, but when you do something you love, especially if it's in a broad field like that, all it does is enrich and enable and create opportunities for you to discover what's next after college.
And what was your major, and where did you attend?
Oh, English literature and philosophy at New York University.
Got it. Okay, so you went to NYU, great school.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Yeah, so it was an amazing fit for me. Like I said, I started at Holy Cross. And for me, I was, after all those years of Catholic education, just ready to try something a little bit different, a little bit bigger. So that's how I wound up at NYU. Once I was there, I was just, there are two figures at the college, at the university, that changed my life. One was Robert Gurland in the philosophy department. He just was so alive. And what was incredible to me was the way he connected complex philosophical issues to our daily lives. He made philosophy real, jump off the page. And similarly, in literature, I met Dr. James Tuttleton, and he had a similar effect. He was a little bit more old school, but there was something in the way that he loved literature that just, spoke to me and convinced me that that was the right path for me.
So you had two really great role models and mentors in your early educational experience. Were there other aspects of your experience? I mean, NYU, obviously, it's in a great area. There's enormous diversity in New York City. I mean, that's widely known. What were some of the elements of your experience at that time that either you knew then or you look back on and value?
Well, New York was, for me, that was the main reason for the transfer, just to be in such a big, wonderful, diverse city where, you could just wander into a bookstore on your way home from class. And in fact, that's how I found my senior honors thesis in undergraduate. I was taking a Hemingway and Faulkner literature class, and the professor said, we're reading all of the major works by these two authors. And I ran into a store, or I guess really wandered into a bookstore one day. And I was looking through, sort of with pride, all the books, saying, I'm reading that one, I'm reading that one. And there was one Hemingway novel we weren't reading. It was called The Garden of Eden. So I bought it and I ran back to her and I said, why aren't we reading this one? And it turns out that that's a particularly complex and interesting novel. It's posthumously published. Hemingway never properly finished it. And a lot of the material challenges that He-Man, hyper-masculine persona that many of us simplistically associate with Hemingway. Well, that was a really authentic moment where I became hooked on the idea of research and working with literature and trying to understand how some of our contemporary issues inflect the study of literature.
Okay, so get ready for a completely unfair question.
Okay.
Hemingway or Fitzgerald? Who's the better author?
Okay. Okay, Hemingway's, I think, actually the better author, but in a lot of odd ways, I personally prefer to read Fitzgerald.
Got it. Okay.
What about for you? Hemingway or Fitzgerald?
Oh, you're throwing it back at me. I was just about to say you should run for office. I mean, I agree. They're both great. I mean, I think that I probably have read more of Hemingway than I have Fitzgerald, but they're both phenomenal authors. So I'll go with both too.
One thing I've been thinking a lot about recently about Hemingway, I've been teaching him again in a gender and literature course. And, he's concerned with war. He's concerned with violence. He's concerned with gender and gender roles.
Yep.
The more I'm reading him, especially, with, the Ukraine, and then also he loves the environment and nature. And when we think about the situation with the environment, I'm just finding Hemingway speaking to the students that I have in front of me now in wholly new and unexpected and really incredible ways. So he's very enduring in that way. Like, just to finish this question with Fitzgerald, Fitzgerald's very much of his time, and certainly The Great Gatsby is the great American novel for so many reasons. But Hemingway's persistent concerns around violence, war, gender, and the environment just seem to persist in our consciousness now and keep him alive on the page in a certain kind of way.
Sure. This is incredibly simplistic to say, but I'm always struck when I read Hemingway at how unbelievably straightforward, simplistic would be the wrong word, but straightforward the language is. Just like it's, and to try to recreate something like that is difficult, if not impossible. And yet collectively, the development of character and addressing this density of issues that you just very aptly defined is really unparalleled. You could certainly find other great authors, but he's there, and obviously so is Fitzgerald.
Go ahead.
So tell us about your next steps. What happened after NYU?
Oh, so after NYU, I attended University of Chicago, and then I worked in publishing for a little while just to see if that would be a fit. I worked at The New Yorker and at Bantam Doubleday Dell for a bit, and then finally decided to attend graduate school at Tulane in New Orleans. So, and then not too far after that, I wound up at Chestnut Hill, where I have been for 17 years now.
That's great. Both fantastic schools in great cities. What was your major at Chicago, and what was your major at Tulane?
Oh, English literature. That's where I specialized. I wish that they had the kinds of interdisciplinary master's and PhD programs that they have now. When I was at Chicago, I missed philosophy, and I even went into the philosophy department and said, can I take a few classes? It was really strange. I was considered very bizarre for wanting to do that at that time. But now, and this is part of what's so exciting with what we're doing at Chestnut Hill College, interdisciplinarity is just built into the way we are approaching our studies. I think that's because the problems we're facing are so complex. No one discipline can solve them. You have to have an appreciation of the different disciplinary inputs.
And an absolutely wonderful point to make in terms of the necessity for interdisciplinary work these days. And I agree with you completely. Yeah. I want to thank Dr. Suzanne del Gizzo, Professor of English at Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for joining us today, and chair of Chestnut Hill College's Center for Integrated Humanities and editor of the Hemingway Review. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. See you next time. Take care and keep reading Hemingway.
Thank you.